Hey everyone, before we get to this week's show, this is just your weekly reminder to please continue to pray for my wife, Lindsay. She is battling breast cancer right now, and we're praying for complete healing in Jesus' name. Thank you.
When we were heading to the Taj Mahal, okay, and we're coming back at night, and it's fog. The fog goes, and you can't see anything. As the fog clears at different points, we had to stop because there were accidents all around the road. There were turned over cars. There were turned over vehicles, trucks, food carts. Everything turned over. It was kind of, I've never seen anything like it. I looked back later on I'm reading, and it talks about this. There's a god called Krishna, and Krishna is called a trickster god. And one of the things that Krishna did, according to the mythology, is he turns over vehicles. And it turns over vehicles. Now, it turns out where he was is a specific area, land, which is where the road was. So we're on the road in the land of Krishna, and we're experiencing that. I'm saying, and that goes with what the Bible says, that behind the gods, because mythology doesn't turn over carts, or doesn't do anything, but spirits can be part of this world. I'm standing in front of like 70,000 people at night, and I'm going to share the gospel. It's an outdoor, and there are Indians in robes, and I said, let me first blow the shofar. Now, the shofar is the trumpet, the biblical trumpet, and I said, we're praying for freedom, and I sound it, and also we don't know what happens. It's like a wave comes back at us, and it's like blood-curdling screams. If you can imagine being there at a deliverance, at an exorcism, except it's thousands of people.
Jonathan Kahn, thank you for joining me here on the show, The Confessionals. Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
So,
for the first time.
I have been aware of your life and your story for many years, and one of the books that I first dove into was The Return of the Gods.
Yes.
And I couldn't help, as I was kind of reviewing some things this morning, it just kind of popped in my head that The Return of Gods seemed to have laid a framework for this book. And with a little bit of the background with me is my show, we dive, especially now, a lot into the supernatural aspects of our existence, being aware that we're in spiritual warfare on a daily basis. And when I read The Return of the Gods, it really resonated with me because of the reality of the suspicions that I had of what was happening. And then what you laid out in the book was like more confirmation. And it feels like this book, The Avatar, is the next stage of that. Okay, so God's returning. What does that look like? And if you could, maybe we could start off with the foundation of, what is an avatar for somebody that would be thinking maybe some kind of movie.
Yeah, which movie would that be? Well, the Avatar, first of all, it's perhaps the most, The Return of the Gods was explosive. This is perhaps the most explosive book I've written, because it's kind of taking it from, as you said, The Return of the Gods, but now coming into our realm, the government, everything. I mean, like how it's actually translating with people and with everything, the events that we've been watching. And Avatar is actually a word from India, which is before the movie came about. The gods in mythology, and this is all across the world, they believe that the gods can have avatars or people or appearances or manifestations where the gods act through the avatar, the person, the thing, the people. Sometimes it could be another god in Hinduism. But so that the question is, could there? We talked about the return of the gods, and for people who are just watching this, they may not know what we're saying, but we'll get into it.
Yeah.
What does that mean? But could now we go to another stage where there actually is people, and maybe people even in the government, and actually instruments of these forces that have come back when we emptied ourselves of God, when as America has been emptying itself. So this is taking it. You're right, but it's taking it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like. But I feel like it's a good level to go because of the fact that people have to understand not only the awareness of the supernatural and what's happening, but also the logistical means behind it. Like, how is this actually going to roll out?
Yeah.
And so with the Avatar, there's this inhabitation of maybe an ancient god, an ancient spirit. Are we talking like possession? Is that what this would be?
It overlaps with that because here's the biblical framework is this, before the gospel came into the world, everything was pagan, basically. I mean, or outside of Israel or outside. And so people are worshiping gods all over the world. And the thing is that the Bible says that behind the gods, they aren't just, there's mythology, of course, but behind that are actually spirits, and the Hebrew word is the word shedim, they call them. These are entities. It says they worship the shedim, not just mythology. They're behind it and it makes sense. I mean, what would a spirit do, or an evil spirit, that to take worship away from God to itself? Right. So all around the world, people are worshiping, and the word was translated in the New Testament as daimonia. We get the word demonic from that. So that's where you got an overlap right there between, on one hand, you have the gods who according to the belief, they will appear as people or infill or indwell people. Well, then you have possession, because if behind the gods are these spirits, really, that is kind of what you're talking about in a sense. I mean, people can be used of these things with, instruments, but also it could be possession. Or around the world, one of the things I open up with in the avatar is I'm sharing the encounters I had. I mean, literally in the nations with these things, and the thing is that in these nations, as far away from whether it's Cuba, whether it's India, whether it's Africa, they all have the concept that these gods can possess people, and the people become like the gods. They move through. So yes, but could this ever happen in America? In one form or another, and that's another thing. But I do open up, actually, when you talk about the supernatural, sharing the encounters I had.
Yeah, could you go into that, please? Because I love hearing these stories, because I feel like it builds people's faith, but it also brings people to faith, because there's people who maybe listen to shows like mine, which focuses heavy on such things, and they may not be walking with Christ, but they're interested in these topics, and these kind of stories, I believe, help bridge the gap to bring people into belief.
Yeah, and by the way, I believe, one of the things, along with what you do on the podcast, what I seek to do in the book is, it's whether someone's an atheist, it doesn't matter. If they read, whether they're a believer or an atheist, they read the book. The book is like, whoa, wait, it's hard to argue with it. It's like there's something there, you got to deal with it, Right. So starting with the foundation, what I experienced, which I've not really shared this in other books. For instance, I'll give you an example. I was called to go to India. Now, India is a land of 30 million gods. And so, there's going to be spirits, and when we were heading to the Taj Mahal, okay, and we're coming back at night, and it's fog. The fog goes, and you can't see anything. But our Indian driver is racing through the fog. And literally, as the fog clears at different points, we had to stop, because there were accidents all around the road. There were turned over cars. There were turned over vehicles, trucks, food carts, everything turned over. It was kind of, I've never seen anything like it. Finally, our car crashes into a truck. The truck drags us. We're in a dragging us. We're going back and forth like we're going to go over too. By God's grace, we didn't get killed. Now, here's the thing. This is like the first 2 days of our mission in this land of the gods, and we were almost killed, And the thing is that when I look back, later on I'm reading, and it talks about this. There's a god called Krishna, and Krishna is called the trickster god. And one of the things that Krishna did, according to the mythology, is he turns over vehicles. Now, it turns out where he was is a specific area, land, which is where the road was. Okay. We're on the road in the land of Krishna, and we're experiencing that. I'm saying, and that goes with what the Bible says, that behind the gods, because mythology doesn't turn over carts, or doesn't do anything,
right.
But spirits can be part of this world. And the other thing that happened in India is, at the end, I'm standing in front of like 70,000 people at night, and I'm going to share the gospel. It's an outdoor, and there are Indians in robes, and I said, let me first blow the shofar. Now, the shofar is the trumpet, the biblical trumpet. Yeah. And I said, we're praying for freedom. And I sound it. And also, we don't know what happens. There's like a wave comes back at us, and it's like blood-curdling screams. If you can imagine being there at a deliverance, at an exorcism, except it's thousands of people.
Wow.
I mean, we've never experienced, it's like a mass exorcism, like spirits going. And so here we're in the land of the gods. Now, these people, they don't know the shofar. They never heard of it before. And yet in the Jewish world, the shofar in the Bible too, is a sign of God's power. But in the Jewish world, it was actually believed that when you sound the shofar, the enemy flees or the spirits flee, and they actually used it during exorcism. But the people in India, they're not reading the Bible and they're not reading the Jewish encyclopedia, but it just happened. Wow. It happened. And actually the Bible says, when God says, when you're in warfare, when you're in war, sound the trumpet and you'll be heard and you'll prevail against the enemy. So that's where it comes from. This is in the, so I experienced this realm where, talking about the gods but spirits, they're real things. Now, so this is what happened. I was after this, I was asked to go to Cuba. Fidel Castro, the dictator of Cuba, decides to open up the island for the gospel, just for religious freedom for 1 month. And not that he really cared about it, but he wanted to show the world that he had religious freedom.
Such a nice guy.
Which he did, yeah. and so I was asked to go there and open it up, and with a shofar, the sounding the trumpet. And so I did, and it was for 1 month, and I ministered across the land. And when I'm in one city, a guy comes off the street, and he says, I have to talk to the Jewish guy. And he says that we've been praying, the believers of Cuba have been praying, there's a curse on the island. And it's linked to what we did to the Jewish people, and Jewish people have to come back, or a Jewish person has to come back, and the curse has to be broken. And he says there's a mountain in the city, there's a big mountain overlooking the city. He says people worship the gods there, and they sacrifice, and there's idols, but God said he's going to turn that curse into a blessing, and it's going to come down the mountain. I'm thinking, okay, I guess we're going up that mountain tomorrow. Yeah. So we go up the mountain. I have the shofar. Get to the top. There's a pavilion of all the gods inside, and guy's standing outside, and he calls out to me, and I don't know the guy, but it seems like he knows me. He comes over. We have a translator. Comes over. He says, "I've been waiting for you," and he said, and he's holding in his hand a ceramic plate, and in the ceramic plate is a painting of me blowing the shofar.
Wow!
And I had the shofar there. And the thing is, he says, no, he says, I'm a believer. He said, God told me to paint this picture. And then I put it in the house of the gods, the idols. And that night, the strap that broke apart, the leather strap broke apart, and the plate came down and struck the head of the chief god of Cuba, the idol, struck it, the idol. In the morning, the worshipers came in and they open up their pavilion and they find their chief god on the floor. And with the crown, the god was named Ochun, was a goddess, and the crown is removed. She was wearing a crown. As they removed, next to it is a plate of this Jewish guy with a horn. And the thing is that they took it as a sign from God. And the thing is, we heard later a pastor from that city came back and he said, the people are coming to the churches, bringing their idols, they're saying, smash our idols. We heard what happened on the mountaintop, and revival broke out in the city.
Wow!
And so this is now, Tony, I've seen this. So this I gave you, just giving you a little taste. Mm-hmm. But that India, Cuba, happened also in Africa, Nigeria, major stuff like this, in Brazil. And the thing is, wherever I went, there were the gods, and behind the gods there are actually entities, and that the thing is, and there's a whole thing with that. This is just setting the foundation. Could this affect America? Could this be affecting our lives? And the thing is that people think, well, America, that's gods are for the past, and but what it's saying is that they're not for the past, number one, because spirits don't die. And it's more dangerous when you don't know, for a nation like America or the West, it's more dangerous when you ignore it and you don't know it, how it can be affecting everything in our lives. And we talked about the return of the gods. And what this is kind of put it together for people who haven't read that is Jesus gave a parable about the guy who's possessed and he's delivered. And the spirit, he stays empty, though. He doesn't get filled with God. Mm-hmm. And so the spirit comes back bringing 7 other spirits, and they repossess the man. And Jesus said his end is worse than the beginning. But people think, okay, that's about a guy. He says, no, so it will be with this generation. It's not just people. Here's the warning, and here's the big thing, is that, Western civilization originally was filled with the gods, and it was pagan. And that means it was filled with the spirits. But the gospel came in, and the gospel drove out the gods, and drove out the spirits. So it's the only civilization that's been exorcised, in a sense. That's what makes it unique. But the warning from that parable is that any nation or any civilization or culture that has known God, been delivered, been known the gospel, if it should empty itself of God, then that which was cast out of it is going to come back into it. And so that's what we've been witnessing in America. You could call it a repossession, and it's not just general; it's exact. Because one of the things in the Return of the Gods is that you can actually name, I identify. It's called the Dark Trinity. Identify the ancient gods and goddesses that are actually behind what we are all dealing with right now.
Yes, and I feel like this is, you're talking about on a macro level in a sense of like an entire nation, but it's made up of individual people who have their own pursuits. And what you're saying is, I know you went into Nietzsche and Dionysus.
Yes.
I would love to go there with you, because
Yes.
I think what you just laid out, and the idea of the gods returning in mass, I think there are people who are actually trying to make this happen. And we can talk about anywhere from the governmental level down to the individual level. And I'll just give you an example right now that I'm pretty sure you probably don't know about. There's a docuseries that it started out with these people got this really weird email, and it was signed by a supposed alien. So they go on this chase of trying to track down this bizarre story in Ohio, and takes them down into Kentucky. And it's an entire series. And at the end of the series, the last thing they do is they find themselves in a cave in Kentucky where they're doing a ritual trying to summon and resurrect the ancient god Pan. And so there's
is this, just so I know, is this a story, or
no,
is
this is
actually
100%
happened?
like it's
a documentary.
Yeah, you could watch it.
Okay.
And it came out several years ago called Hellier.
Yeah.
And it's just, and the interesting thing about that is it kind of mirrors Nietzsche in the sense that Nietzsche, from what I understand, his father was a pastor. And the guy who was doing this with his wife, he married a witch, but he came from the faith. His father was a pastor, and he's divorced himself from the faith.
Yes.
And so it's like when you remove yourself from the faith and you remove God out of your life, you do open up that door for many things to come in. And I think it's pretty severe.
Yeah, that totally goes with what Jesus said, and it goes with the mystery that it's worse. For instance, in the parable, it's worse if the guy had never been delivered. He just stayed in that. It's worse that he was delivered, and then he opened himself up to get repossessed. And so to turn away from God is worse than never knowing God.
Yeah.
And so if you look at and that's with people, as you're just naming right there, it's not an accident that they came from in a sense, a Christian format, because that's more dangerous. A pagan civilization will produce a Nero, but a post-Christian one will produce a Hitler or an Antichrist. So it's more dangerous, far more dangerous for any nation. Now, this involves America and the West that has known God to turn away from God. It's a dangerous thing, and so that goes with Nietzsche. I mean, and for those who don't know, let me set it up this way. I don't know if you saw the Olympics, but okay. So, and everybody who saw it, you know what I'm talking about. This was probably the most widespread act of blasphemy we've probably ever seen. And that is the opening ceremony. By the Olympics already have a pagan thing to it to begin with, but you've got this opening ceremony, and they have the Last Supper, a representation, except for, instead of Jesus and the apostles, they have drag queens, and they have the one who's Jesus is a woman, an openly, lesbian woman. And then, in the Last Supper, you have the body of the Lord. The elements represent the body of the Lord, the bread and the wine. They have a plate, a covered plate of food. They take off the plate, and instead of the elements of the communion, it's the god Dionysus. It's an ancient pagan god. So the first thing is, it's amazing because think about it. In the beginning of the age, Jesus replaced Dionysus and replaced the gods and drove them out. Now you got a picture of the reverse. They're replacing Jesus with Dionysus. And Dionysus is a pagan god of immorality, sexual immorality, possession, drove his followers into frenzies, into madness, to commit violence. And so you have a picture of what's happening in our society, what's happening in our world. It's actually replacing Jesus with that. And that's what tells you, when you take Jesus out, it's not going to stay empty, not going to be neutral, not going to be secular in the end. You're getting God's back coming in. So now the other thing is, so when you mentioned Nietzsche gives us an example of really what happens, because he's one guy, and Nietzsche, what he advocated for was get rid of Jesus, get rid of God, take him out, get rid of Christianity, that's what he wrote about. He wrote, in Germany in the 19th century. But he actually was a a follower, an admirer of Dionysus. He talked about him all the time. And the thing is, so he wants Jesus out and Dionysus in.
Yeah.
And the thing is that at the end of his writing career, as Dionysus, the god of madness, he goes mad. Nietzsche becomes insane. And he ends up signing his works, not as Nietzsche, but as Dionysus, as if he was taken over. And the thing is that even though he went crazy and that was it for his writing survived. And one of those who read his writings was Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Nietzsche became the philosopher of Nazism.
Wow.
And so look what happened. And Nazism did that exact thing. They drove out God and they were basically possessed. And so now we see this on the Olympics. It's a mass thing of saying what's happening in our culture. That's how important this is. That's what we're dealing with. That's how big this is.
So as a philosopher, was he openly atheistic? Because I got the sense that he was, but I have a hard time with some of these people who they push back against Christianity, they push back against Christ, but what they do is they just introduce a new form of spiritualism. And you're talking about the Dionysus. That's literally just. It's not atheism. It's a new theism.
It's a new God.
In your life.
Well, this brings it's an important point, because according to the parable, if you empty yourself of God, you're not going to have atheism. You're gonna have the empty house is not going to stay empty.
Right.
And and you're not even going to have just secular. So notice. So you always, doesn't matter what it is, Nazism. It was pagan all over. They had, it wasn't neutral. It was evil, demonic. Same with communism, Marxism. What happened with that? They said there's no God, but they became demonic. They killed millions of their own people. The state became God. So we need God. So if you drive God out, there's always going to be another God in one form. Even if it denies it, there's going to be another God. So Nietzsche would literally lift it up. Dionysus. The house does not stay empty. At the beginning, in the 1960s, we drove God out of the schools. The house did not stay empty. Now look at what has come into the schools. Look at what has happened to the children. But because you need God. It's one or the other. It's either God or the gods.
Yeah, and I see the difference in our culture in the children, specifically as a father, where you actually see when you introduce Christ, you introduce God into the children's lives and stuff. How they develop from there is dramatically different than other areas of our culture.
Yeah.
So I just feel like when we see these figures like Nietzsche in history, you see it get passed down through other influential people like Hitler as well. So is this something that you think is going to pursue or continue until the end of days? Is there a way to stop this? Because when we're talking about avatars, one of my thought processes, kind of going back to the fundamentals, is can an avatar be redeemed? Somebody who is inhabited by an ancient god, a demonic spirit. Is it possible? I'd hate to say no, but is it something where it's incredibly hard to be redeemed and come to Christ?
Well, on one hand, if by avatar we're talking about somebody who's possessed, somebody who's possessed can be delivered. So that's one thing. If someone, there's other forms of this, and one of the things that the avatar reveals, and that's why it's probably the most explosive. It reveals actually people or a person on our political stage right now. And we can get into it, who actually, the life of this person is in effect an avatar of a specific deity. It's amazing and it's crazy, but it's real. Does that mean that person is possessed? I don't know that. Driven by, moved by, impelled by, used of entire life? Yes, but there's always hope, but see, so we're talking about, on one hand, people, and we're also talking about a nation. Can a nation be delivered? Because America is kind of, what's been happening with our culture. It's like a possession. It's like the return of these gods. It's actually, and that's why we've been looking, Tony. Like the last few years, it's like, this is madness. Yes. How could people be for the mutilation of children. I mean, how can people be for, they go on and it's crazy. How can people say there's no such thing as male or female? I mean, and medical association. How could that happen? It's not rational, because it's a possession, And so one of the things that, we go from the realm of the gods to avatars is the realm of leaders who are on the stage right now, for good or for bad, because also, notice something else. God can use people as instruments, the enemy can as well. And we're witnessing this. So you talk about like the end days, I believe you're going to have both. You're going to, you have the power of God, you have the power of the devil, the Lord is stronger, but in the end days, the night gets darker, but the lights get brighter. So it's warfare, is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we can go into that then, the person you're referring to and how that kind of plays out, because I find it very interesting, the connections you made with her.
Yeah. Let me, if it's okay, just to set a little stage with it, to talk about some of the leaders, because there's an ancient template. We bring this from the realm of the gods into the realm of kings. There's an ancient template in the Bible that actually reveals what's happening on our national stage, like with virtually every major American leader in the last quarter century. There's an ancient prototype behind them, and once you see the prototype, it's like, whoa, and I'll give it I'll just give a very quick overview, and we'll lead to Trump, and he's not the avatar, by the way.
Okay.
But then we'll get to that. But that. When Israel was falling away from God and getting into these gods, there was certain kings who ruled over it. And the amazing thing, it was the house of Ahab. The house of Ahab was an evil house. And the thing is that the amazing thing is, from this period of time, you see each one is like a template and a prototype of people today, and they don't know it. They have no idea, but it's amazing. Quick example. There was, Ahab he knew about God, by the way, but he was torn, and he launched a culture war against God. It divided the nation, culture war. And his reign was filled with scandal and all. Well, he's the prototype behind the man we know of as Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton actually followed the template of Ahab. And the thing is, Ahab, it said Bill Clinton was on the national stage for 22 years, from governor to the end of his presidency. You read in the Bible, Ahab was on the stage of Israel for 22 years.
Really?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I'm just throwing this in. When Ahab, in the 19th year of Ahab being on this national stage, is a big scandal. 19th year of Clinton on the stage was 1998, and it brings you to the big scandal of his presidency, the Lewinsky scandal, which he was, And by the way, it's in the same exact. It's not just the 19th year; it's the 19th year to the month. I mean, and maybe to the day. Let me throw another one just with this, and that is that with Ahab, after Ahab confesses, at one moment he confessed his sin, then he turns back again. Bill Clinton confessed finally. It was months later. But 3 years after Ahab confesses, a calamity comes on the nation. Okay, 3 years after Clinton confessed, comes 9/11. Not just the year, but the exact day. 3 years to the day of his confession.
Wow.
To the morning, to the hour. Okay, so to just give you an idea.
Wow.
Now Ahab had a wife. Okay, and his wife was even more radical than he was, and was for actually the killing of children, the big child sacrifice. That's Baal worship. Her name was Jezebel. Well, the template, and it's not that we got to pray for everybody. We have no enemies. We pray for them, but it's being followed by Hillary Clinton. Clinton was the abortion champion of the century, voted by Planned Parenthood. Child sacrifice. She was like a co-presidency. Hillary Clinton was on the national stage with her husband for 22 years, but then she continued on in national office or running for president for 14 years. Well, Jezebel was on the national stage with her husband for 22 years on her own, 14 years.
Jeez.
And then you have another one. I'm going to do this quick here, but another one who was like a son of Ahab who reigned, whose name was Joram. And I won't go into the details, but Obama is going to follow this without knowing it. Obama was on the national stage for exactly 12 years, from the Democratic Convention, where he was a celebrity, to his last day. 12 years. Well, Joram was on the national stage for 12 years, and so it keeps going. And the thing is, here's the thing, Tony, is that when you look at this template, if it had kept going on like that, if God didn't interrupt it, it was going to be the end of Israel right then. It could be sealed to apostasy. The house of Ahab was taking over everything. Well, America has been like that, where this culture that wokeism and this whole anti-God has been taking over like every major institution. But then there's a surprise in the template, and it's not about a man, okay? But the surprise is that, and this is the mystery of Donald Trump, and that is that a man called Jehu. God raises up a man called Jehu. Jehu is wild. He's unpredictable. You never know what he's going to say next or do next. He's not a politician. He's a fighter. Well, so was Donald Trump. Jehu embarks on a wild race, literally a chariot race to the throne. Donald Trump. Jehu makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of Israel. Donald Trump makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of America. Jehu invites one of them to be his partner, running mate in this chariot to go. So did Donald Trump, who's religious conservatives. And Jehu, in order to come to the throne, he's got to come head to head against the nation's former first lady. Think about it.
Wow.
And everybody was saying that, Hillary Clinton was going to win, but the template said, no, she's going to fall and Donald Trump is going to win. The American Jehu is going to win. And the mystery of this is the mystery of one of the things I open up here is this is continued. The mystery of Donald Trump, not only his first time, but his second, right now, what's happening right now is all unfolding from the mystery, which is what the Avatar reveals.
This is absolutely amazing because, like you said at one point here, you said it's not about the man, and it's not. Like what you're laying out here is repeatable things happening throughout time because of the ancient gods and the ancient spirit behind it. It's like that's the manipulation that's happening, and you see it happen in the natural unfold.
It's amazing you're saying that because when I wrote the Avatar, I wasn't necessarily thinking of these people as, in a sense, avatars, whether of God, like an instrument of God or but in some way this goes too. It's like manifesting, and it's manifesting with exact dates. I mean that's crazy,
incredible.
Yeah, and the thing is, let me tell you how like this ancient mystery in the Bible actually determined the elections, the last three elections, in this nutshell. And that is that the template of Jehu is he comes to power. First, he's opposing the king who's on the throne. But then the king kind of is gone, and then comes a woman in the place of the king, and then he defeats the woman. Okay, a woman with an anti-biblical agenda. Again, it's not about the people, but it's about. And so look at the template when Donald Trump won. The template it was the template of Jehu. First he came against Obama before anything, but then he's going to replace Obama, and Jehu replaces the king. But then he comes against the woman who has an anti-biblical agenda, which was Hillary Clinton, who becomes the standard bearer. But now in 2024, what happened? You have the template of Jehu. Trump comes against the sitting king or President Biden. Mm-hmm. He defeats him. I mean, in that debate, it's the end of Biden's political career, just as Jehu defeated Joram. Okay, but then a woman rises in his place, which was Kamala Harris. Same template, and has an anti-biblical agenda. And so Donald Trump comes against him, template of Jehu, he wins. Now in 2016 and 2024, it's the template of Jehu. 2020, it wasn't. In 2020, Donald Trump is the sitting king. This doesn't happen. And so he doesn't prevail. But he prevails in 2024 because it's the template of Jehu. So even this ancient mystery is determining what's happening in America.
Wow. I'm almost speechless with how that all lays out. That's pretty incredible. So with these things, and you're talking about the political side of things, have you looked at maybe the cultural drive of maybe entertainment industry and some of these people?
It's all part of it.
Is it all part of it?
It's all part. It's in the biblical template. It's not just political. The house of Ahab, which was taking over culture, was not just taking over. It wasn't just a political thing. It was taking over culture, like every part. And we see this. Look what's happened. Like just before this last election, where things were going. You had this kind of anti-biblical agenda taking over virtually every single institution of America, not just the political realm, but even the army was turned. Even the Department of the FBI, the Department of Justice, the school system, the entertainment, the movie industry, the culture, the pop industry, the music industry, everything, Wall Street, the corporate world, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, virtually, it was amazing. And that's exactly what was happening in the template until Jehu came. And again, it's not about Jehu. By the way, Jehu, we don't even know where he was at with God. He's a man of controversy. We don't know, but we know he was used of God. And the same with Donald Trump. It's not about Donald Trump, but Jehu was an instrument of God, and he was used to oppose the house of Ahab, to take it apart. And by the way, this even goes with, when you look up to this last election, you had Joe Biden. Okay, now it's going to sound kind of strange, but Joe Biden is actually also part of this ancient mystery. Let me give you a quick thing on that.
Please.
And that is, there was a king during this template, another king, his name was Jehoram. Now, and Jehoram he knew about the things of God, like he was raised knowing about it, but he turned against them. He was apostate. Joe Biden originally Joe Biden was against abortion. On demand. And yet he turned totally, where literally just a little while ago, they were arresting pro-life people, grandmothers, and putting them in jail. Crazy. But the thing is so Jehoram is interesting because at the beginning of his reign, he suffers a disastrous military withdrawal or retreat in the land of Edom, and it weakens his entire reign. Joe Biden, it was called Afghanistan. Disastrous withdrawal that week. Remember that? Weakened. That was really the end. When it was at the beginning though. Then another thing that happened during Jehoram's reign is you had a problem of border incursion. Foreigners were crossing the borders in the time of Jehoram.
Right.
And it seems like nothing was done. Another thing that happened is during Jehoram's reign, the land of Israel was attacked by there was an invasion of Israel. Well, during Biden's, there's an invasion of Israel, October 7th. Mm-hmm. In the Bible, the people who invaded Israel it says the Arabians and the Philistines. The Arabians it's another word for Arab. Philistine, you know what the word Palestinian means? It literally means the Philistines.
Okay.
Literally. Wow. The word in Arabic for Palestinian is Philistini. So literally you have the same exact invasion, and the invasion in Jehoram's time happened from the Gaza Strip. The same invasion, and they took hostages back to Gaza. This is in the ancient Jehoram. So the American Jehoram, Joe Biden. Not only that, but there's so much to this, but Jehoram ends up kind of trying to compel the people to worship other gods. And Biden was the one who signed the Respect for Marriage Act, which was actually the opposite of what it was that it was to force people and to force pro-life people or Christian organizations to support abortion. But what happened at the end of Jehoram's reign is he gets beset by physical infirmities. Okay, now think of Joe Biden. He becomes enfeebled. And we don't even know if Jehoram was actually reigning or people around him were signing this stuff. We don't know. But same it happens with Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, actually Jehoram, he had, at the end of his reign, he had one son left. Biden had one son. Jehoram's son was his youngest son. Biden's son was his youngest son, Hunter.
Yeah.
With Jehoram, the name was Ahaziah. Neither of them followed the Lord, but you have Ahaziah, you have Hunter. Now listen to this, Tony. Ahaziah in Hebrew, in the Bible, comes from the root word ahaz, which means to seize. Okay, to seize. In Old German, the word to seize is henten, linked to the word hunter. Literally.
It's like you can't make this up. How do you view this then? Is it something that's being played out almost prophetically from these ancient gods just trying to redo what they've done in the past, and they're trying to, it's literally done on purpose, or is there some kind of divine nature to this?
It's amazing as you said that. I would say both, because God works through, there's evil, but God works through it all. But interesting that you just said that, because on one hand, we're saying, very simple, when you drive out God, the gods are coming back. Well, the gods are coming back. Now we're going to see things on the ground, with people that happened back then when the gods were there. So it's like replaying it. It's all part of this thing. Now, I would call it a template or a pattern. But the thing is that, so it's unfolding. And I think one of the things it does, Tony, is that it kind of tells you, kind of clarifies things. Okay, we're dealing with good and evil. We are really, these are forces. We war not against flesh and blood. We got to pray for all these people. We war against principalities, but it's affecting everything. I mean, this is real. People say, okay, well, you're into spiritual warfare. That's kind of great. No, this is affecting every single thing. And the thing is that, but God is also working. Like, the template of Jehu is God working. Again, it's not about Jehu. We don't know where he was at, but he's used. So think about what did Jehu do, and then think about, if you want to understand what's happening now, it's amazing. What Jehu, he was anointed to strike down the house of Ahab. Okay, he was anointed to, so what did Jehu do? When he got in power, he purges the government. What does Trump do? He purges the government, more than anybody said. What did Jehu do? He dismantled the temple of Baal. He dismantled it, took it apart. What has Trump been doing? And listen, it's not about, I'm not saying everything he does is right. We don't know that everything Jehu did was okay, but Trump has just been dismantling all these things which represent the house of Ahab. First, one of the first things he does on the day that he gets elected, he says, or that he's in there, he says that from now on, we are recognizing only two genders, male and female. I mean, it's like rolling it back. And not that Trump is reading the Bible, like reading these things. He's just fulfilling it. He's being used to roll back this thing. And so, by the way, when the first mention of Jehu was to the prophet Elijah. When Elijah's saying, there's nobody left, Lord, it's just me. And God says, no, I'm going to raise up people. Anoint this man, Jehu. And he talks about the sword of Jehu. On the night of Trump's inauguration, at one of the balls, it was on television, they hand him a sword. And literally, he lifts it up and starts waving it around and dancing with it. What president does that? Well, the sword of Jehu, that is really the mystery of Donald Trump. That's what that's what we're in. And that's going to lead to the actual avatar.
The parallels are unreal. Now, you just said the phrase "the actual avatar." Do you mean the Antichrist?
No. Although
I was going to go there actually and ask you.
Although that's a good point. I mean, the avatar, the Antichrist really is an avatar of the enemy of the devil. Just like listen, the Lord, he's the anti of Jesus. So the Lord is the incarnation of God. So yes, I mean that's what the Antichrist. That's the ultimate. I mean, you're right. But so as we get closer to that day of the Antichrist, we're going to see shadows of it. And so here's the thing now, I'm going to, and this is, it's crazy, mind-boggling, but it's real. And that is, and it's not about the person. We got to get, I'm saying this, I'm making a point. We got to pray for all the people. We love people. That's it. But we got to recognize this. And the person doesn't even know they're being used. Could there be an avatar, outright on the national stage? Well, there is a, house, the word avatar comes from Hinduism, the Hindu world, Hindu gods. There is, in the Hindu world, there's a house, a lineage from which avatars, according to Hinduism, come from this line. It's the house of Brahman. Well, born to the house of Brahman was a person named Kamala Harris. So she's born of this house of avatars. In fact, their Hindu line is called, her family's name was Gopalan, which is actually the name of an avatar, of the god Krishna. The one, And the thing is that she was given the name Kamala. Kamala is the name of a Hindu goddess. Okay, so she's literally bearing the name of a Hindu goddess.
Wow.
Not just that, but if someone missed that, her middle name is Devi, which means the goddess. Her name is Kamala the goddess. And literally in Hindu writings, they talk about Kamala Devi, Kamala the goddess. And so you have that to begin with. Okay. Now, the other thing is that when you look at this, is like when I saw this, like when you look at the myth of the goddess Kamala, she is born. Her birth is linked to the ocean, and she rises linked to the ocean. Well, Kamala Harris is born by the ocean, the San Francisco Bay. Her rise was San Francisco by the ocean. One thing that the goddess Kamala does, I got to distinguish it right here, is that she becomes the number 2 ruler. In other words, there's a king ruler, which is the god Vishnu, and she becomes like his number two. Okay, so Kamala Harris, I mean, was she ordained for? I mean, but in a dark way, to become the number two of the land of America. She becomes the number two leader of the vice president. And the thing is that Vishnu is called. You know how Joe Biden was called Sleepy Joe. You know, Vishnu was called the sleeping god.
No way.
yes. And now there's so much to this. There's so much to this that I can't, I'm giving you, as best I can, I'm giving you a taste of some things in the Avatar. But the thing is that also another thing about it's Kamala Devi. Devi is the name of a goddess who's called, you know how Kamala Harris, she laughed all the time. They called her Laughing Kamala at the wrong times. It didn't make, she just laughed. Well, Devi, the goddess is called the Laughing Goddess.
Wow.
The Laughing Goddess. Now, let me take this one step further. And that is, there's one day on the Hindu calendar where they worship the goddess Kamala. They have idols, they take it. And on that day, it's called Sharad Purnima. Okay. In the early 60s, Sharad Purnima fell on October 20th, 1964. Kamala Harris was born on the day of the goddess Kamala. Came into the world on the day of the goddess Kamala. Not only that, but that night of that, which is a full moon, they all around in India, they celebrate the goddess Kamala entering the world under the full moon, and they open up their houses to receive her in. Well, on the night, Kamala Harris was born on the night of the entrance of Kamala, the goddess, into the world under the full moon.
Whoa!
And one more thing about this is there's one day in the Hindu world where they actually talk about they celebrate the birthday of the goddess Kamala, and they talk about the birth by the ocean, all that. The woman Kamala was born on the birthday of the goddess Kamala. The birthday for all around the world. When she was born, people were chanting praise to Kamala when she entered into the world.
Jeez.
And it's not that she knows it, but what we're talking about, when you talk about the gods, they use whom they will use.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in the ancient world, Tony, when you go into the pagan world, the kings were considered avatars of the gods, the pharaohs, and they did images of the king, and they merged the image of the king with the image of the god or the goddess. Well, there actually was an image that appeared just before Kamala Harris went to the White House for the first time. 30 days before, it was put on the web, and it was actually her own family that put it on, and it was the image of her, Kamala Harris, merged with a Hindu goddess. Literally, the avatar merged, and it shows her at war, and she's riding a lion, and she's coming against her enemy. But the interesting thing is, she's spearing her enemy, who they show as Donald Trump. But that was in 2020. But she wasn't going against Donald. She was the vice president. And she's riding. The lion has the head of Biden on it. And so he's supporting her, but that wasn't in 2020. That was in 2024, but it came out 4 years before. So was this part of this whole, the plan, of this thing? So that's what we're dealing with. So on one hand, that election, we had an avatar on one hand, and we had a Jehu on the other. And the thing is that there's one other mystery here, but which is kind of like the ultimate mystery here of Trump and of really where we are, which we can kind of seal it.
I mean, that's wild. I mean, I think what you just did is paint the picture that there is human interaction here, where people are naming their children, but there's spiritual forces behind that manipulating people's motives and their agendas, and whether they're aware of it or not. There's a real spiritual war that's happening around us, and it's tangible today.
Yes.
I hope people get the book, The Avatar. Where can they get that?
Yeah, The Avatar is literally everywhere. If you go online right now, you'll see the cover. This is video, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the cover looks like this. So if you see that, now it's not. Don't go for the movie. Make sure it says. There, and I think there may be another book that says The Avatar. So make sure it's the right one. But if you go online, you'll see it. You can get it, even if it's before the release date. You can get it early. They'll send it. But it's literally everywhere. I pray people get it, not just for yourself. Get it for people in your life who need to wake up to know really what's happening and how real this is, but it's literally everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we'll link it in the description of our show so people can just click and go. So I really appreciate joining you.
Thank you. It was a joy to be with you, Tony.
Absolutely. Thank you.